Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
Time for Truth Show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to a Time for Truth show. It's a pleasure to be back with you after this beautiful Passover, Easter holiday season. I hope you had a great time with your families. And that's our topic for tonight, really, is how are we going to preserve not only our families, but the subsequent result, which are our communities, our nation, United States of America. We're beset by unbelievable changes. 76 million Americans using psychotropic drugs because of some kind of emotional or mental problem. 52 million Americans who are smoking or utilizing marijuana in some form, again, looking to ease their stress, to feel better. 60 million Americans illiterate in the United States of America, leading to a tremendous amount of confusion, upset, economic turmoil, trying to find answers for all of this. And tonight's show is going to be a very interesting show because we're very lucky to have a tremendously prolific, competent, and productive human being with us. And Engineer Buddha, let's put his images up on the screen and introduce Lance Miller, the 2025 World Champion of Public Speaking, an award-winning speaker and trainer, having delivered over 5,000 presentations in more than 60 countries on executive communication, leadership, and effective management principles. He is the CEO of Terra X LLC and served as an executive with the 1984 Los Angeles Olympic Organizing Committee, also with Nestle and Anheuser-Busch. He has developed sales and marketing programs across 8 different industries and completing 5 new business startups. Mr. Miller shares an adventuring perspective of having lived life, having sat atop 14,000-foot peaks, rafted the roughest whitewater in the United States, sailed transatlantic from the Virgin Islands to Norway, piloted his own aircraft hundreds of hours across the U.S., scuba dived under the ice of frozen lakes, and twice hitchhiked through Europe. His nonprofit activities include being national spokesperson for the Citizens for an Alternative Tax System, being vice president of the International Foundation for Human Rights and Tolerance, and president of the Way to Happiness Foundation International. And Buddha, if you will, I'd like to bid a warm welcome and put him up on the screen live to Lance Miller. Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you, Ben. It's quite a rousing introduction you gave me.
Well, I want to tell the viewers that I actually had to cut about 2/3 of what you've done because I think they would have passed out from the sheer volume of what you. You are an amazing human being, without a doubt. Thank you for taking the time to be with us.
No, it's great. I appreciate you having me on the show. And yeah, I've taken advantage of a lot of opportunities, created a lot of opportunities in my life. And, looking at that, I can really credit the fact that I grew up in a very sort of stable family with a lot of productivity at a young age, so that I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid of life was the main thing. So I was willing to risk losing it all in the process of living. So.
Well, I can see you had great parents, great family, and you're definitely a unique human being. I've interviewed a lot of people on my show, and it leads me to ask you a question that to me is very interesting. What were your dreams when you were a young man?
Well, I think like a lot of people, well, I think we all want to reach a certain level of success. And I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, in a town of about 2,000 people in Indiana. My family was I was the fifth generation of my family in that town, so we'd been there for a long time. And we had a dairy processing company, an ice cream manufacturing business. We had a chain of convenience stores and restaurants, small chain in eastern Indiana. So I grew up working in that, and because of that, I had that base. And so one of my dreams was to expand that and to have an opportunity to give other people a lot of opportunity in life, to work for a good company and whatnot. At the same token, I watched my father and grandfather get stuck in the business, and the business really ran them instead of them running the business. And I went, I want to be able to live life too. And so I'd always had a penchant for adventure. And so ever since I was very young, I was 14, I talked my parents into sending me out to the Telluride Mountaineering and Leadership School in Colorado. And I spent 6 weeks in the Rockies learning to climb, basically rock faces and rest myself sliding down snowfields and use topographical maps to navigate, and did a 10-day hike to the Rockies at 14. And so I was always looking to sort of push the next limit of myself. So when you asked what my dreams were, my dreams were to see the world, but also to give a lot to the world. And I don't know that I had a specific, I never had a specific, I want to live on a house on a lake, in this one location. I just wanted to be able to take advantage of opportunities when they came up in a position to see where I could go.
Well, it's beautiful. It makes a lot of sense with what you've accomplished in your life. And then it's amazing the championship that you won. And I wanted to ask you first, what inspired you to take up public speaking?
Well, it's interesting. I think we all have innate purposes that come out of us. I can look back when I was a child, and one of the things we did, we raised horses. So we had a barn. We had about 8 horses in it. And at the age of 10 or 12 years old, I'm in the barn by myself shoveling manure. And then we sort of on a hill looking over these rolling hills in Indiana. And I can remember stepping out and looking at the hills and saying, "You have a message to give the world." And then I would look at myself and I was knee deep in manure. And I went, "Oh, shut up, Lance. Who do you think you are?" And I go back in and shovel manure some more. But all through high school, even junior high school, I would take advantages to get in front of the class and speak. And in college, I was in a fraternity, and we had weekly meetings with Robert's Rules of Orders and debate, and we would debate different policies and things we were trying to pass. I was very passionate about that. And I just saw an opportunity. I liked bringing people together. I liked bringing truth out. I liked instead of sitting there being a spectator in life and listening and being told what to do, I wanted to try to be a player in life and bring people together to accomplish something that was fantastic. And in my life, I looked at a lot of people that communicated and changed the world. And, that was an aspiration that I had in some way, to try to communicate and make things better, through my actions.
Very,
And
very
so, I mean,
interesting. Now,
go ahead.
no, you're a world-renowned expert in addressing public, and you've done so much. What are the important points that you could share with viewers who are out there and they feel that they're shy, they're reticent to be out in public, and what can you share with them? Where should they start?
Well, here's what I can share with them. First of all, the hardest thing in public speaking is just be yourself and talk to the audience. And that's because you have to figure out who you are. And for a lot of us, and this was very true for me, I was a little different person than I was with my family than I was with my buddies out on Friday night, than I was with the people I was at work with or the people I was at church with on Sunday. So I sort of morphed to the different groups depending who I was with to get along with them. And I remember I would have like one of my buddies on Friday night meet me with my church group, and I'd have an identity crisis. And when you stand in front of an audience, a lot of people try to be what the audience wants them to be, and that really makes the audience the author of their thoughts and their actions and their speech. They're trying to give the audience something they want, and they aren't saying, this is what I want to tell the audience. And so that's why I say the hardest thing is to just be yourself. So in the process, you have to discover yourself and who you are and what you believe in, what your purposes are, what your messages are. And the only way I was able to do that was I was in an organization called Toastmasters, which is a public speaking group, and I got to give a lot of speeches, and I got to try a lot of things and see what worked and sort of figure out who I was. The other thing I would tell people, if you have a lot of stage fright, you're nervous, you don't think you can do it, I say speaking's like a muscle. You have to exercise it. And it's unfortunate, but most of our speaking muscles are very atrophied because we've been told to sit there and shut up most of our life, starting usually with our parents. How many kids were like, just sit down and be quiet, right? And then in school, you succeed in school. Think about this, Ben. You succeed in school if you sit in the right seat at the right time, do what you're told, and raise your hand to speak. And we get conditioned that the authorities have to give us permission to talk. For 16 years, if you go through 4 years of college, you raise your hand before you're allowed to speak. And then you get a job and you go into this new workplace and nobody wants to hear from the new guy. So you get a desk and they say, show up on time, work hard, don't rock the boat. And someday if we like you, we'll promote you. Sort of that's just a summary of it. So what happens is you sort of turn over your creativity and your initiative to some authority, hoping that they'll give you success in life. And so we have to undo that. We have to strengthen that speaking muscle. We have to have the courage. The other thing is, Ben, I think we can all agree, speaking is it's a very emotional subject. We've all said stupid things and gotten laughed at. We've all said intelligent things and been laughed at. We've all said wrong things and felt like, oh, I guess I'm stupid. Everybody's had those things. So speaking has a lot of negatives to it that we've experienced in our life. So you stand up in front of a group to speak, it's like it's on a magnifying glass because it's not just one-on-one. There's 30 or 40 people there listening to you. So it's 30 or 40 times more powerful if you say something wrong or you feel like you're going to say something stupid. So you have to exercise that muscle. And that's where stage fright comes from. It's just a lack of speaking. So if you have stage fright, you're nervous, you need to get in a group. And that's why I highly recommend the Toastmasters program because it's a very friendly place. It's a great place to fail. It's a great place to screw up. If I was marketing the program, I would go, Toastmasters, a great place to fail. Come here and do all your failure so you can succeed in life. And I went in and I tried a lot of things. I messed up a lot of stuff, but nobody fired me. And I was appreciative of the fact they didn't fire me. They let me come back to the club the next week. So,
what you're saying makes a lot of sense because that's what I found in so many things I've done in my life is that you have to have a mentor or a teacher that's easygoing. And I have one of those who's a good friend of mine who's helped me tremendously. And you're so right. And then the other aspect is just doing it and just being willing to fail, I guess, and just to continue. And, you have an interesting company. I wanted to ask you, because your company is called Terra X. I was wondering, does that mean that we don't know what planet this is? And can you share with us a little bit about your company, Terra X's, sustainability project or programs?
Sure, absolutely. No, we were looking at what to call it, and the whole thing I wanted to do was put a name together that was showing we're working to like sort of go to the next level with planet Earth. Because there's a lot of sustainability issues, and I think we have to be smarter. There's a lot of political components to the whole climate crisis issue. There's a lot of untruth in that, but it just makes sense that we do more with less as we develop our world. And I have two partners. I put a group together, and we were looking for business opportunities. In the process of that, we came across 4 or 5 companies that had just phenomenal sustainable products. They've been out there for 20 years. They didn't know how to market them. They didn't really know how to distribute them, but they were brilliant engineers, brilliant manufacturers, tested, proven products. So my team is an expert at really marketing and distributing and how to set systems up and create a brand and all that. So I sat down, I was looking at what could I, as far as the genesis of the name, I'll get into the products. The genesis of the name was I was just looking at what could I call it that would give the idea that this is a helping Earth to the next level in some way. And I, quite honestly, I took a hitchhike off of Elon Musk's SpaceX, and I went, SpaceX, let's SpaceX. That's what let's do. And I was looking for different words that you couldn't do. Earth X was out there, and there were different things. And Terra is another word for Earth, and Terra X, and it's actually been phenomenally well received. I've had a lot of compliments. People love the name, and it creates a tremendous amount of interest. So I'm very pleased with the reception we got. I really liked it when we saw it, and stuff. But we have products that basically help people produce more with less. And we have a product you put in existing air conditioning refrigeration systems that removes the oil fouling that occurs in those systems. Because there's oil in the compressor and it mixes in with the refrigerant, then it bakes on the inside of the coils where the heat transfer takes place, and it kills the efficiency in the unit. So we can take an old, maybe 20-year-old unit and increase the efficiency 30% and extend the life of it, so that you don't have to buy a new air conditioner and you're using 30% less electricity. And because you don't have to buy a new air conditioner, it means that old air conditioner isn't going to the dump, and you're not using metal to produce a new one. And you can continue to use that one. And we have products that are in the agriculture market that structure water in a certain way that it makes it more it bio-enhances the water so it's more acceptable to the plant or the animal, so it hydrates the animal more completely. So you don't waste water in irrigation. We usually cut irrigation water by about 25% with larger root structures and increased yields on the crops. We have another product that's a foliar spray that you spray. It's a plant-based organic foliar spray you put on the plant that helps it produce more chlorophyll. And so the chlorophyll is sort of the lifeblood of the plant. Because it's producing more chlorophyll, the plant's stronger. Because the plant is stronger, it's got a larger root structure, it needs less fertilizer because it's pulling more nutrients out of the soil. Because it's stronger, you need less pesticide because it can fight the pest on it. So we can cut fertilizer and pesticide use, which are typically chemically oriented products, get that out of the system put by having an organic plant-based product that we put on. So we've got different products. I've got several products in the wings we haven't brought out yet. We're really working to get our air conditioning product off the ground right now. And I've got several key clients, large corporations that are in the testing mode with it and working through that right now. So it's actually going very well. It's just taking, as it always does, it's taking a little longer than we originally thought it was going to take. So
that seems pretty much normal in life. Things always end up being a little more effort than, the dream is always pretty quick and it just happens overnight. But in real life, it seems like it's more of a long-term game. We got to get to the fourth quarter, last 2 minutes and keep going. And then it finally happens. But, it's very interesting. You've held a lot of very high-level positions, both entrepreneurial and humanitarian. And I wanted to ask you, because it's kind of like the theme what we're looking at tonight with what's going on in the country. Tell us a little bit about when you were president, of this, the Way to Happiness Foundation International?
Well, the Way to Happiness Foundation was put together for a book called The Way to Happiness, which was written after a study of about 20 cultures in the world to figure out what was a set of values that mankind embraced, regardless of their culture. And if you look at almost every religion and every culture, there's certain fundamental things, to help children and honor your parents and don't kill people. And the golden rule is almost every place: doing to others as you'd want done to you, or don't do things to others you don't want done to you. And we have as mankind, we have so much in common, but we typically focus on the differences all the time. And I have some great stories about that. I won't go into, but there's some really funny stories about how much in common people have, and they'll focus on this one little difference and then separate people out and individuate from them because of that difference. So the Way to Happiness book is non-political, non-religious, and so it can be accepted any place. It's translated in about 140 languages or something. It's one of those translated books in the world. And there's been, I don't know, it's like 140 million books used worldwide, and the foundation runs that. The thing that I really liked about it was I had a very transformative experience when I worked for the Olympic Committee in 1984. And I just moved to Los Angeles from my little town in Indiana, and that was my first job. And I was assistant manager of the motor pool at the University of Southern California, and we had 300 volunteer drivers, and we drove 70 countries. And I kept thinking I was going to see some weird person walk up to me from some culture that was just so strange. It's like out of a National Geographic magazine. You'd see somebody with, I don't know, bones to their temples or something like that. And everybody that came up had this beautiful smile and these twinkling eyes, and they were just gorgeous human beings. Every single person that came up was just a wonderful human being. And it totally changed my perspective on the world. And also the 84 Olympics were very successful. It really saved the Olympic movement. Those of us like you and me that are old enough to remember those Olympics, up to that point, the Olympic movement was really questioned because countries and cities were going into billions of dollars of debt to put the Olympics on. The 84 Olympics made $300 million. It was a whole, we used existing venues. It was a whole series of things that shifted. It was extremely successful, but I walked out of that thinking, we can do this. We can get along for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks in Los Angeles. A city as large and diverse as LA got along fine. People stayed off the freeways. The traffic was great. All these cultures came together. Everybody got along fine. And all I see on the news is war and destruction and dissension and disagreement. Of course, that's what the news is. That's why you see it on the news. But I saw that we could actually get along, and then I went into the corporate world for a number of years, and it just was not satisfying to me. There was a big world out there. There was a way we could bring people together. So for 5 years, I worked with the Way to Happiness Foundation to forward those programs to bring people together and help people respect one another and be able to talk to one another and have common values that they, regardless of where they came from. And, it was a fascinating time to look at the massive problems we have in the world, how a lot of that comes down to the set of values that the two people embrace. And if you actually give the people the right values, the big problems go away. And I always said, it's like we have this whole thing always going on between Israel and Palestine. If the Palestinians could just appreciate the tabbouleh that the Israelis make, and the matzo balls that the Israelis make, and the Israelis could appreciate the tabbouleh that the Palestinians make, and they'd say, you can make great tabbouleh, you make great matzo balls, we'd be that much closer to peace just because they found things in common that they appreciated about each other, right? And so, to that degree that we can find things we agree upon, we can get rid of the disagreements. And that's really what the whole purpose of that foundation is about.
But very interesting. That it's so true that when we get things that we mutually like, and that's one of the reasons I like to run this drug education program, because my feeling has always been, if we get the parents together and they're protecting their kids, and you get them all in the same room, they're going to go, well, why are we fighting? We got to protect our kids. Let's forget about everything else. And So the principle that you're talking about makes so much sense. And so I want to ask you a few questions about this Way to Happiness program. So is the program delivered by written material or audiovisual or both? And is it taught or is it self-learning? So tell us a little bit about that.
It's based off a little book. It's it's less than 100 pages. It's a small book. It's easy to read. It's got 21 chapters in it with 20 different values. Like I said, anything from taking care of yourself to, not drinking too much to being productive in your life and respecting religious beliefs, all the different things of that would be involved in that. So there's children's books, there's like coloring books and children's exercises you can use, but it started with this, as a lot of things do, it starts with this base property, this one book. And then there's been videos made on each chapter, so people can watch videos about how to be industrious in life, or why it's important not to steal, or what happens when you're trustworthy. All these fundamental things that we all learn. From that standpoint, there's teachers' guides to teach it in school. There's programs and to put it into corporations so that you can actually have sort of a common set of values in a company. And one of the biggest problems in corporations is employee pilferage, stealing from the company, but also lost productivity to the fact that people don't get along and feel harassed by each other. And they go to work and they're looking over their shoulder because they're afraid somebody's going to do something, or they feel someone doesn't like them. And it's not a high morale friendly environment to go to work in. So you don't work well in areas that you feel are hostile to you. And a lot of work environments feel hostile. So you're not producing. You're sort of half your energy is going up, even just mentally, half your energy is up there that you're nervous about, am I going to get in some way negatively impacted by somebody in the company? So what this does, it brings everybody sort of on the same page so that they know how to get along. So there's multiple programs. There's online courses you can do. And again, it's like anything. When the book is written in the early 80s, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have personal computers. We had VHS tapes. We had 8-track tapes. We had dial telephones, all those things. Okay. So it's evolved with society as it's come along. From that standpoint. So there's a lot of different components to it. There's children's books that are just about making good choices in life. And that's something kids have to learn how to do. And it's interesting because human beings, unlike animals are born with a certain instinct. Birds are born and you don't have to teach them to fly south. They're born and they fly south, right? Human beings aren't born with instinct. And so human beings require somewhere between, let's say, 15 to 20 year nurturing and education period to actually socially develop the skills that they need so that they can interact and they can learn what they need to learn. And along that line is, and quite honestly, a large way, one of the biggest ways we learn is through mimicking the environment we're in. So if we're in sort of a hostile environment, we'll have a tendency to mimic that, and that's how we become. And I think all of us have had the experience of reacting or saying something that we heard our parents say, and sometimes it's a little shocking, and you go, oh my God, why am I saying that? But the truth is, like a little child doesn't know it's not okay to steal. If they see something, they'll pick it up and take it home. It's not that they're evil, they just don't know that's wrong. Because they never were taught the value of stealing. So if they see something, they're going to pick it up and take it home. Now they see something, you're taught you don't steal. Okay, I want to see something, I bounce it off. Oh, well, that's stealing, it belongs to someone else. So we start to give those values in there. And so what happens is the actions that people take that cause friction, cause upset, or detrimental to other people start to cease because they can evaluate their own thoughts based on the values that they can bounce those thoughts off of. Because we all have random thoughts. We don't know. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. How do you know if it's a good thought? You have to compare it to another thought. So by teaching people common sense type values, they can bounce their thoughts off their value set and live a happy, productive life.
And they go the right way. They don't go the wrong way. It's interesting. I have a story to share with you on that, is that I had a woman in my office, young woman, and she wasn't healing properly. She was young, she was healthy. And, after a few times of not healing properly, I said, this doesn't make any sense. So I said to her, do you smoke anything? And she goes, what do you mean? I said, well, do you smoke cigarettes? You smoke marijuana? You vape? She says to me, oh, well, yeah, I smoke marijuana. And I said, oh, well, to let you know, scientific studies show that's going to affect your healing in your mouth, your bone healing, your gum healing. And she didn't realize that. She goes, I didn't know. And so I said, yeah, that's what it does. And now that she knew, she said to me, like you just said, she said to me, well, I'm going to stop. She didn't get upset. She didn't say, well, I'm going to go anyway. She got, like you said, some common sense, and she stopped. And, so let me ask you a question. Obviously, the program makes sense. So how do you see that if this program was implemented, how could it help not only the social sector, but I'm thinking in my office to get my workers sometimes, they do things and they don't realize how it impacts the business and how that affects me, my ability to help them. Because I want to help them because they're there working with me. So how do you feel that this Way to Happiness program could impact the social and the business sector in our country?
Well, it's got huge statistics of going into like neighborhoods or crime-ridden areas, and the books are passed out and people read them, and the crime drops, and the streets are safe just by the Way to Happiness book being distributed. There's hotels that put the Way to Happiness book in the hotel rooms, like the Gideon's Bible, only this isn't religious, so it's just as a guide for people, and they see that there's less towels and bathrobes and things taken. Rolls of toilet paper aren't taken from it anymore. And it's not. The interesting thing is, especially if you read the book, it doesn't make anybody wrong. It doesn't condemn you because you did something. It's actually written very much in the third person. It just says, if you do this, this will happen. If you do this, this will happen, right? Well, I want this to happen, so I'm going to do that. So it really helps you make the right choice because everybody actually wants to be happy. And the same way in businesses, it's, like I said, there's a lot of, it's interesting, you're in medical practice. There's been a lot of medical practices, especially like chiropractic, dental, physical therapists, people that are more, I would say, typically working with people on a more of a holistic basis in some capacity to really handle what's going on. They'll be able to have their office staff trained on it, which helps. It helps people regain their self-respect, so they really respect their decisions. They know they're making the right decision, so they can trust their decision. And they're not like, I'm not sure if this is right or wrong, and somebody told me it was wrong, but I feel that this is the right thing I should do. And we've all had those things. We've all had the authorities in our life tell us that we're being bad and we shouldn't do that, and that's what we want to do. And it's not that we were bad, it just wasn't what that person wanted us to do, right? So what happens is we start questioning ourselves. When we question ourselves, we're not sure. We don't respect our own opinion anymore because we're questioning our own opinion. Well, the Way to Happiness helps you respect your own opinion, so you trust it. Then you're not, creating situations with other people. So it stabilizes the office out, and it also, really creates which I've said, it creates a beneficial activity for the client base that's coming to the business, because not only is the business servicing with their technical expertise that they have, but they're actually helping them with their life achieve, their fundamental happiness and sanity. And it's interesting. A lot of times this happiness thing says, happy. It seems to be a little fleeting, or it's trite. I've had the opportunity to study almost every major religion on earth, and practically every religion started with mankind contemplating three fundamental questions, which it was, who am I? What's my relationship to the universe? And is it possible to be happy? That concept of being happy is a drive and a purpose that I think every human being has. And we look at even when, the founding fathers of our country put together the country, and it really wasn't in the Constitution, it was in the Declaration, but it talks about the desire to be happy. And what that means is it means the desire to achieve our own goals and purposes in life and not to have to work for somebody else achieving theirs. And what typically happened was governments were run by sort of a lord serfdom or a royalty, that everybody worked for the king. and you didn't have an opportunity to achieve your own happiness because your labor had to go for the king. And here you could work for yourself and achieve your own happiness, achieve your own goals, your own purposes in life. And that's really what brings about happiness. And in order to do that, you have to be able to get along with everybody, and you have to trust yourself. And so that's sort of what lays out in this little book that solves all these problems we have in the world.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic because it's common sense. Sometimes the books that we refer to are so complicated, or they have a lot of different complex vocabularies with different philosophies and with reference to different scientific data. And, I encountered that as a doctor in some of my, histology courses and anatomy courses. And by the time I left there, I was more confused than when I entered. And, our class was a pretty smart class. They had a cumulative 3.72 GPA in dental school. It was a New York dental school.
Wow.
And, but we all walked out of there like in a maze and in a daze and confused. And, we were joking with each other. Wow, what happened there? So it's great that this book is written in such a way and it makes sense and it goes step by step. What are some of the precepts or these chapters in this book that you were talking about? Can you give me some examples?
Sure. I mean, we've talked about some of them, but I just want to say a lot of books you're talking about are not written for the benefit of the reader. They're written to promote the ego and intelligence of the author. And so the author complicates things to show the world how smart and how much insight they have into them. And it's not really a communication to help the reader from that standpoint. But
Right.
Back to your question, the Array to Happiness book starts off with, the first chapter is on how to take care of yourself. It's just simple things like get plenty of rest, make sure you see a doctor and you're taking care of your health and you're eating the right foods and, fundamental things. And it was interesting. I'll just tell you, Ben, on that, there's a chapter that says take care of your teeth, see the dentist. And when I was in my late 20s, I never really had many dental problems or anything like that. And I went to the dentist one time and they found a soft spot. And there's this new dentist I went to, and this lady goes, "We get to drill." She's like all excited. And I was like, I'm laying there with all this stuff in my mouth going, "You're that excited about drilling my teeth? Get it. I'm getting out of here." And I just said, not today. And I quit. I didn't go to the dentist for like 8 years. And next time I went, I had these big pockets around my gums. I had 3 or 4 cavities in my teeth, and I had to have all this deep cleaning done. And I wasn't happy. I had thousands of dollars of dental work because I didn't go to the dentist for 8 years. And I remember I knew the Way to Happiness book at that time, and I used to look at that and sort of laugh at that little concept, take care of your teeth, see the dentist regularly. And then I looked at it, I said, I'm really upset. I have all this dental work, and they were concerned they were going to have to do surgery and all sorts of stuff to handle my gums. Fortunately, I got them handled. But it was interesting. It was a little thing, but it had a big effect when I looked at what happened when I left that out. It's the same thing. It talks about getting enough sleep. I like to say sometimes we could probably handle all the problems in the world if everybody just got 8 hours of sleep every night. People wouldn't be crabby and upset all the time because they were well rested. But it's very true. If you're well rested, you can get ahead of your day. You can start right. You feel good. If you're tired, you get up late and you're pushing and you're cranky and you're not treating people well. So it talks about that. It talks about not drinking too much. It doesn't say don't drink. It just says, drink in moderation. It talks about being faithful to your partner or your spouse. And again, it doesn't talks about you have to be married or anything like that. It just says don't be promiscuous and, sleeping all over town. So to just be faithful to the person you're with, that brings about happiness. And he goes through these whole, different steps in this thing, love and help children. And how do you help a child? It tells you how to help a child. Respect your parents, honor your parents, and there's all sorts of issues in society between parents and children. And there's reasons for that. And the book helps people have a better family. And I talked about that family life is so critical to the development of stable human beings, stable, productive human beings, that they have a good, solid family they're coming out of. It's shown broken homes the kids are like 60% more likely to be involved in some sort of antisocial activity, from drugs to crime to truancy or whatever, because they don't have that stable family they're coming out of. From that standpoint, then it goes on up to being productive at work, being industrious, and how to be competent at things, and then it goes into a whole section on how to get along with other people, from treating people like you want to be treated to not treating people like you don't want to be treated, how to respect the religious beliefs of others, and how to even handle it if somebody's trying to convert you to their religion. And that's always something I never like those conversations when someone comes up to me or knocks on my door, in the middle of the week, and I open the door and they're there preaching to me or something. And I go, those aren't happy situations, but I learned how to handle them so that I handle them so the person knocking on my door is happy they knocked on my door. And I'm happy they knocked on my door, and I didn't get my religion threatened in some way in the process of it. So, and then I think one of the biggest things I've gotten out of it, we all take hits in life. And there's times that you just want to curl up and crawl under a rock someplace and go away and think that's the solution. And the last chapter is about the fact that there can be people, and I came out of a little town and a big family, and I had a lot of this going on from that. There are people that are always sort of like gnawing at you or telling you you're not doing well or something like that. And that's one of the reasons I moved to California. I was just trying to figure my life out. But the solution to all that is to stick to your goals and stick to your purposes in life and really flourish on what you want to do. And if you do that, you'll actually handle all those negative naysayers who are around you, because you're being successful at what you want to do. And you don't have to go attack them or go back to your high school reunion and tell everybody how stupid they were. You can just be successful, and it speaks for itself. So that's the book in a summary. I left out a lot, but I think that gives you an idea what it covers.
You know what? It makes a lot of sense. It seems straight to the point. I noticed myself that when I compare the way I grew up and some of the things that were maybe a little more normal back maybe 50 years ago, and I look now, and we've advanced so much technologically, but in terms of our social manners, our really paying attention to one another, reality rather than just socially in maybe not really a real way. And I see how much effect it's had. I see it in my own practice. A person comes in, first thing I do is I just say hello to them, which a lot of times they're surprised. They go, "Oh, the doctor said hello." And,
Yeah.
I tell that to my colleagues, and sometimes they're shaken up by it. They go, "Oh, yeah, that's true." They realize they're not doing that. And the next thing I say to them is, "How can I help you?" And I let them talk to me and just try to be cordial. And, it makes so much sense. So I think that this way to happiness is fantastic, Lance. And, you have so much that you've done. I want to ask you a question because we're at the end of the show. Can you come back again and speak about another topic?
Oh, sure. I'm glad to come back on. I can squeeze these things in pretty easily. So there's a number of things we can talk about. Like I said, I've been to, it's actually over 80 countries. I got to check the bio I sent you. You said 60, but I've been to 80 countries around the world, and I've done a lot of challenging things that push me into new areas of competency because I was able to confront and handle incompetencies I was finding in my life. And so there's a ton of stuff we can talk about. For 7 years I worked heavily in the human rights area, mostly in the religious freedom area, because there were laws being passed in Europe and Eastern Europe that were targeting specific religious groups and things. We had to find a way to do that in a harmonic way that actually brought people together and didn't create or further the problem in the process of it. So we had a lot of fun doing that. Those were some of those, and it's interesting, Ben, we talk about so much of the world is tied up around, can I make more money? And some of my biggest adventures and most rewarding experiences had nothing to do with money, but they all just had to do with about bringing about a better condition for people, helping people, solving some problem that allowed people to come together as human beings and exist as human beings. And when I look back on my life, those are the greatest moments that I had, was making those things happen. And a lot of times, one of the reasons they were so great was we did it without a lot of money. We did it with a lot of heart and a lot of purpose and a lot of intention to make it happen. And I think a lot of times it happens, people can throw money at stuff and they don't have the heart and the purpose and the intention because they got the money. And
That's
so they
right.
wind up
Well, you
trying to
know
solve
what,
all the
Lance?
problem.
Absolutely. A lot of times I think we lost sight of what wealth really is, because you can have a lot of money, but if you're not happy, that doesn't mean anything. But if you have a wealth of friends, you have a wealth of a good feeling inside of you, like you said, because you did something that was on your purpose, something for humanity, something for your family, something for the community. And unfortunately, as all good things, we've run out of time. So we have to end the show, but I want to thank you for coming on tonight.
My pleasure.
It's been a very, very, happy experience. A lot of fun, light, and I know the viewers have enjoyed it. We definitely will have you back. Maybe speak on these human rights issues you talked about, or maybe all these. I thought we should do a show on all these experiences you had with the 14,000 feet and the airplane across the world, and you're quite a character. So for all you watching out there, this man has really explored life. So let's take a look at this book, The Way to Happiness. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you on the next episode of A Time for Truth show. Have a very good night.
This show was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet